Okay, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to See It, hosted by Bryon Knows Movies. I'm so excited to be back with you today. It's a little bit of a slow news day as compared to last week. Last week it was crazy. We had the DC lineup and Sundance had just happened. We had a controversy with the Oscars. Not that much stuff going on this week, but I do want to talk a little bit about the news and things that are happening in the world of film and things that are definitely going to affect you moving forward in terms of how you see film. And then I want to talk about a little bit about Black directors, my top 10 Black directors of all time, and give you my reasonings for placing them where I place them. This is going to be obviously a subjective list, but it's also part of my Black History Month program, Bryon Knows Black Film. So I want to get started talking about AMC. AMC has just released that they're going to be changing the way that they charge us for movies. It's very interesting. I have an article here from CNN discussing it. They says it's actually from CNN Business that we were able to get some information. It's been all over the news everywhere else, though, as well. Jordan Valinsky, he's with CNN Business, says that America's largest movie chain announced that the prices of a ticket will now be based on seat location, meaning seats in the front will be cheaper, while more desirable seats in the middle will now cost more. The ticket pricing initiative called Sightline at AMC will roll out at all of its roughly 1,000 movie theaters by the end of the year. Here's a quote from AMC saying that live theater such as Broadway has long been using a similar method of pricing for seats, although front row there can fetch top price. Sightline also provides customers with an incentive to sign up for AMC's Movie Pass, like subscription called AMC Stubs A-List, because members of the monthly program can access the preferred seating at no extra charge. Let me say this. A couple of things. AMC is not the first theater to do this. One of my another theater I attend regularly and I like a lot, B&B Theaters, has something similar to this in some of their theaters, where you would have to we have to pay a little bit extra for a little bit better seat. So it's not anything that's unheard of. They're trying to follow the types of models that you see with Ticketmasters and concerts, and they mentioned Broadway in the post there. I get it, but then I also have to say, as you can tell from my byline down there, this is very a boneheaded move. It makes me believe that the people who made this decision are not normal people that attend the theater, especially their theaters. First of all, AMC is like the bargain basement of theaters. The quality. Let me back up. I go to AMC a lot. In fact, if it wasn't for AMC's A-List, I probably wouldn't be able to do this job, because I do subscribe for that. You get 3 movies a week for their subscription service. I think it's like $30 at this point. Very great value, especially, if you go to a movie more than twice a month, it pays for itself. But that's probably the only innovative thing that they've done in years that was really geared towards the consumer. And there hasn't been anything else besides that they've tried to do to save them. Theaters, they almost went out of business during the pandemic. The only reason that they were saved is because of, the stock market bros trying to stick it to Wall Street and buying that stock up the way they did and inflating the price. It helped them float around for a little bit. But let's be honest, they should be a lot worse than what they are. And instead of trying to figure out a way to get people back in the theaters to incentivize the experience, they want to nickel and dime people. Let's remember that the movie theater experience is supposed to be art that is accessible to all. When we think about like the Great Depression and how Hollywood was booming during the Great Depression, it's because people could take, their little 5 pence, a little bit of money they have, and have some escape from the world, right? That it's escapism that happens in these theaters. And to start to try to outcharge the better seats in these theaters that, one, they need to be updated. None of them have really been updated in years, and the ones that are around me anyway, they're pretty bad condition. Two, your concessions are horrible. You have the worst concessions in all of theaters. Instead of trying to fix and that's where you're trying to make your money, especially if you're getting people to sign up for AMC A-list, you want people to buy concessions. You're not improving your concessions. You're not improving the viewing experience within the theater. You're just charging for what we've already been getting for a different price. And I don't know how much it's going to be in terms of the value seating, in terms of being in front or being on the side, but I know that the rollout of this announcement makes it seem like they're going to be increasing the cost across the board for people in those preferred seats. It'd have been different if they said, okay, prices are going to stay the same as they are now, and we're going to go ahead and decrease the prices for those seats to get more access to people who want to go to the movies. No, they're going to increase the price. And who does this hurt? It hurts families most of all. I'm in a Midwest city. It's not a huge city like LA or New York or Philadelphia or any of those places, but it's a top 20, top 25 city in terms of population. I go to the theater all the time, as you can expect. I lose my AMC pass. I went to AMC 70 times last year for movies. It's not the only theater I patronize, but it's one of my main theaters I patronize with the 70. Every time I'm in there, it doesn't matter if it's like a matinee or it's prime time on Friday, it's pretty empty in there. The only movies that really had crowds were Top Gun Maverick, Avatar: The Way of Water, and then the family films. And that's, to me, is what's so sad, is because I feel like it's going to hurt families the most, where you have multiple kids, you're trying to bring the whole family out, and now you have to either settle for side seating that you could, or pay additional costs for the seats that you're getting anyway. You're already shoveling out $50, $60, $70 on their trash popcorn and whatever, just because the kids want it. And now you're going to upcharge. It just doesn't make any sense. The people who made this decision, I understand the reason, the logic behind it, but it lets me know that they don't go to the movies as an average person, and more particularly, they don't go to their own theaters. Like B&B Theaters is an upscale theater compared to AMC. I'm sorry, it is. My local theaters, my local cinema, I go to a place called Screenland. It may not have the best screens or the larger screens, but man, the people are so nice. The concessions are amazing. And it's just a more fun viewing experience in that local theater. And they're not doing it. It just, like, who's your competitors? And understanding your stuff. You're the Walmart. You're the Walmart of theaters. Come on now. Stop trying to nickel and dime people. I don't understand why they're doing this. I think it's going to blow up in their face. Maybe they're going to get enough feedback from both Hollywood, because it's going to hurt their ticket, their box offices as well, if this ends up deterring patrons, or from just the bad publicity that they received from the rollout of this announcement. Maybe they'll go back on it. We'll see. But I think that this is just going to blow up in their face. Now, there are things that they could do to get people back in the theaters. I see it. Other theaters already implementing this. The Super Bowl. Do a Super Bowl watch party in the theater and have, concessions and drinks and things like that. And people can see the Super Bowl on the big screen, or a big sporting event, or season finales or season premieres of huge shows on Netflix and Amazon Prime, and those types of things that people are interested in. Work with your streaming services to put things into the theater so you can make some money. But no, instead, the first thing you do is like, how can I squeeze more money out of the consumer while still offering them the same exact thing? It's so silly. Let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts about AMC doing this price gouging through tickets. Again, if you get AMC A-list, it's not a big deal. You're going to get the premium seats regardless, just like everything else. And I think that they're trying to get that subscription service to balloon a bit and make sense. But you're basically holding people hostage to get it. And that's just, I don't know. Their whole board needs to be fired after such a silly and stupid PR disaster that they released upon the world today. So that's just my quick thoughts on that. We'll see what comes from it. But in lighter news, I do want to talk a bit about my top 10 black directors of all time. This is part of my series, Bryon Knows Black Film. I will say before I start that when I initially was making my list, there was only one female director on this list. And I had to check my biases and my privilege and think to myself, Bryon, why are you not acknowledging more black female directors? Like what's going on? And so I started to do my research and I found another name that I added to the list, but for the most part, what I understood was that black women have not been trusted by this system, the film industry, to be behind the camera. Black women barely get any good roles in front of the camera, but behind the camera, it's just non-existent. I couldn't really find anything that was of repute. Not saying that there wasn't films out there, but I couldn't find anything that I had ever seen past 1980, the 1980s. And we are at 100 years of cinema now, and it's just black women just have not been given the chance to show what they're made of in terms of being directors, producers, and so forth. Now, I do see this changing quite a bit, which I'm excited about, that black women are getting a lot more opportunities and responsibilities behind the camera, directing, producing, show running for TV and streamers, those types of things. It is happening, but it's took so long for us to get here. And I think that it's sad. I do want to acknowledge before I start that's the reason why you don't see that many women on here, just because they just haven't had the opportunities. And personally, I have a blind spot when it comes to the movies that have been made. So I do want to point out just a few of the women directors that I actually like a lot that are on the come up. Chinoy Chuck, I talk about Teal every 5 minutes with you guys. She directed Teal last for 2022. Daniel Deadweiler should have an Oscar nomination. I think Teal should have a Best Picture nomination based off of what came out. And I think that she's going to continue to do amazing work. Nikyatu Jusu made Nanny, which is like a horror thriller, which horror thriller is like my mainstay. Amazing work. And that's on Amazon Prime, I believe. Really great movie, really fun movie. I heard her story on I think it was a Big Picture podcast she was on, talking about her story in terms of how she went from making short films to Nanny. Mariama Diallo, Master, is a really fun horror thriller that's on Amazon as well, starring Regina Hall. Regina Hall is telling you guys, hey, look, don't typecast me, don't just pin me just in comedy. I can do comedy, I can do drama, I can do thriller, I can do all of it. So really, really great director to keep your eyes on. I have not seen 1001. It just premiered at Sundance this year. But A.V. Rockwell, a black woman, is the director of that film. It's starring Tiana Taylor, and it won the Grand Jury Award for Dramatics at Sundance. So this could possibly be a Best Picture, or early Best Picture contender when it does come out. Look out for that. And then probably the most excited I am about Nia DaCosta. I love Candyman. I'm so glad that Jordan Peele, who's the producer of that, identified Nia DaCosta for that work from some of her shorts and trusted her. Because that's the thing, is that studios were not trusting black women. So I'm glad that now that some black men are starting to get a little bit of power in the industry, that they're trying to give back. And Jordan Peele is an example of that. And Nia DaCosta took that opportunity and turned out a really, really good film. In terms of Candyman, I'm so excited about the Marvels that she's going to direct as well. This is going to come out, I think it comes out in May or June. This is about, it's a Marvel movie. And I'm so excited that we're having black women direct tentpole projects that's going to make millions and millions of dollars for the studios, right? So those are some of the directors I'm looking out for. I'll probably do another video and add some more to this list. But if you have any directors we should be looking out for, please put it in the comment section and let me know. And let me know what projects of theirs that you really like. So I changed my list of top 10 directors a gazillion times. I know that's not a number, but that's the number I use a gazillion times. And I'm sorry that my graphics are kind of elementary. It's because I kept changing it and I couldn't have a chance to really put some nice graphics, but I at least wanted to put some images up of some of the honorable mentions. This is not even all of them that I wanted to talk about. Gina Prince Blythewood, she directed what could arguably be one of the best black romantic movies of all time in Love and Basketball. It's a pretty decent basketball movie too, and it's starring Sanaa Lathan and Omar Epps. This is definitely my favorite romantic movie that came out of the era that I think came out in 2000, which would have been right when I was in high school. She just directed The Woman King, which took so much to really put that movie together, from the stunts to the shooting schedule. It took 7-8 years to make the film, and she should have been nominated for best director. The reason we haven't had that many best director nominations for black women is just because they haven't been given those opportunities to direct major feature films like this, or even independent films that get a strong enough budget to be able to compete for those types of awards. So when you skip over somebody like Gina Prince Blythewood, who was obviously deserving of an Oscar, who knows when the next Gina Prince Blythewood project that is available for that type of award is going to come up. So I think she should at least been nominated for that position. Sorry, I don't like sipping and slurping. I'm not slurping the mic like that. The Antoine Fuqua, he did Training Day. He did a Fast and Furious film. He's worked a lot with Denzel Washington, Equalizer, Equalizer 2. I think he's directed Equalizer 3 as well. He just worked with Will Smith for Emancipation. My thing with Antoine Fuqua, he's an action guy, which there's nothing wrong with it. I love action movies, but most of his films I don't feel like really center black people, and I think that's what you're going to see as a common theme with the people that I did choose, is that they're focusing on black stories with predominantly all black cast. Not saying that Antoine Fuqua doesn't have any interest in that. In fact, he just did Emancipation this last year. But I think that I want to see a little bit more from him before I would put him on my top 10. He's an honorable mention. I'm not saying he's terrible. I'm not saying that he's some sort of sellout because the movies that don't put words in my mouth, Internet. Antoine Fuqua is good, but he just doesn't make my top 10. Steve McQueen, 12 Years a Slave, I think is the best slave narrative that's ever been put to film in terms of a feature-length film. I always talk about, if you're going to do a feature-length film on slavery and it's not going to add something to what 12 Years a Slave already showed us and the story was told, then why make it? I don't think that there is anything that's a better example of how to show black trauma and also black resilience than 12 Years a Slave. I think that the reason why he's still honorable mention for me is because he doesn't have any other films to worth mentioning, I guess. At least not to me. So he's obviously not done. He's going to be around for a while. I think he's doing some TV stuff too. But this is a film podcast and a film channel. So honorable mention. William Greaves, you probably never heard of him. If you have, good kudos to you because you definitely know your film. He's a documentarian. He is someone that I couldn't put in my top 10, mainly because I just haven't seen enough of his films to do so. And I don't want to, even though I do that with one person on my top 10, to be honest, but I didn't want to do that until I saw more of his films. He could make the top 10, but he's probably the main black documentarian that you would have seen. He made a lot of stuff about black leaders and so forth. So, yeah. Those are my honorable mentions. Let's get into the top 10. Starting with the controversial one. Tyler Perry makes my top 10 directors of all time. And I say that knowing that I am not a big fan of 90 to 95% of his projects. I don't care for them often than not. I think that his storytelling can be a little simplistic. I think that some of the tropes that are in those films are, one, unfunny, but two, seem to be a little offensive, to be honest with you. But I also understand that he has produced and directed a lot of films that have made a lot of money, and he has an audience, particularly of black people, black women, the black church, who love these films and do get something out of it and do appreciate the storytelling and do appreciate the character development. That's why he's so successful. He's a billionaire. And he's not only put movies, he's not only directed, but he's produced movies. He's got so many TV shows that he directs and produces it as well. And he makes my top 10 because of the amount of work that he's put out that has been received by his audience very well. The fact that he was able to skirt the Hollywood system and work within the Hollywood system at the same time. The fact that he can identify talent. He's produced some films that have had Oscar nominations. And that's nothing to blink at. I know we're talking about directing now, but this is really more of the holistic Tyler Perry experience. Also, he's employed so many black film creators, writers. Even though I know he had his controversy with writers a little while ago, but he's employed them. He's employed so many black actors. He's rejuvenated so many careers. It would be blasphemous, despite what you think about Tyler Perry, not to have him in your top 10 to me. That's my opinion. I know that people will say that he would be in the bottom 10 for a lot of folks, that he sets the race back. There's the Boondocks episode that everybody references. And I think some of that is unfair. Just because you don't like something, I can recognize that there is something that there is an audience and a story that he tells, and it's an authentic story because he's been telling it since he was doing his plays. And he's doing it from his own experience. Excuse me. So kudos to Tyler Perry. He makes my top 10. Those are just a couple of movies, but he's made like a million of these Madea movies at this point. Number 9, Julie Dash. She directed a film. She's really the only director that's on my top 10 that's really on there for one film, and that is Daughters of the Dust. Daughters of the Dust came out in 1991, I believe. And it was the first feature-length film that got a full theatrical release. That means all theaters, U.S., or almost all theaters, U.S. It wasn't a partial release or a limited release. It was a full release in history. In 1991, she's the first black woman to do this. That just proves my point earlier in terms of how black women have been locked out of the space to be able to produce and to direct these types of films. But she was able to do it. It is an independently financed film that went through the circuit, the film circuits and stuff like that, and was picked up. But Julie Dash did it. And Daughters of the Dust, it's about, if you haven't seen it, it's about women who are leaving, they're Gullah Geechee, and they're leaving the island to travel to the mainland for better opportunity. And it's about the story of connection between these women, and there's friction, there's connection, there's love, there's facing the unknown. It's a very sentimental picture. Pretty much everybody in the film is a woman. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I don't think that there may not be any men in that movie. I'm sure that there's one because the family that moves. Yes, there are men in the movie, but not many. So that's also a credit to her to be able to direct a movie and produce something that good to be able to get a wide release. Now, it's also a little Hallmarky, if I could say that. For me, that's why it's not higher. And plus, she really hasn't been, and unfortunately, it's not obviously not because she doesn't have the talent. She hasn't really been able to get any other roles directing at the level of Daughters of the Dust, and we haven't seen much from her, or else she'd probably be higher than what she is. She's the filmmaker that I actually forgot about. And I ended up adding to the list after I did some more research. Number 8, Ryan Coogler. Now, this is one of the more recent directors that's going to be on this list. And people might say, Ryan Coogler, it's too early to say that he's in the top 10. And I will say you are wrong. And the reason you're wrong is the reason it's subjective. That's your opinion. I think that Ryan Coogler has done some things that's going to set up Black filmmakers, Black directors for decades to come. One, he got into the doing feature-length films by producing probably the best interpretation of police brutality and police violence and unnecessary with a connection to Black Lives Matter movement in Fruitvale Station. Is so sad. It's so heartbreaking, that film about a man, Oscar Grant, who is flawed. He has he lives a life that's not, he's not some minister or something, but he's human. He's a normal guy. He makes mistakes, but he's trying to take care of his daughter. He's trying to do the right things. He's trying to take care of his mother, and he gets into a conflict with some other guys and ends up getting arrested, but then ends up dying in handcuffs, gets shot while he's handcuffed and dies in San Francisco, Oakland area. And Ryan Coogler tells his story with so much soul and so much care that's what put him on the map for me. But then he produces Creed with Sylvester Stallone. This is a personal bias. The Rocky, I love Rocky's my favorite movie of all time, and to have him bring some lifeblood into that movie is great. But what is so important about Ryan Coogler is what he's done with these Black Panther films. One, he took Black Panther, all Black cast for the most part, except for 2 or 3 people. Black people abound behind the scenes of this movie, and made $1 billion with that film. The first one, $1 billion worldwide. Not only that, but he got Oscar nominations for Marvel out the wazoo because of his leadership on set in terms of the hiring the people that he hired and directing the heck out of this movie. And he did it again with Black Panther 2. Didn't make as much money, but Ruth Carter's up for an Oscar. Angela Bassett's probably going to win an Oscar. Who wrote this? Ryan Coogler wrote the screenplay for these movies. And the reason why that's so important is because comic book movies are going to be so important, going to continue to be so important moving forward the next 10, 20 years. And he showed not only that Black talent can lead these films in terms of directing, but also you can center Black stories or minority stories in general and still get a general audience to support it. And there's no way, even though we showed up in terms of Black people in droves for this film, it doesn't make that type of money just off the backs of Black people. He had to make something that was going to appeal to everyone. And the thing is, also, it's very unapologetically Black. There's no getting around that in these films. And it's so important that he did that and was successful at that, because that opens the doors for a Nia DaCosta to do something with the Marvels, and Simu Liu to be able to land the role and tell a story that is rooted in with Asian American or Asian influences in terms of Shang-Chi. Those movies are important because they bring the dollars to actors and actresses and everybody behind the scenes, and that's just the most important genre in movies, because that's what's keeping studios afloat. So Ryan Coogler makes number 8 because of his success with Black Panther specifically, but also obviously Fruitvale Station and Creed. Number 7. Number 7 is Ava DuVernay, and I love her brashness and how outspoken she is, but also how professional she is, how on point she is. Selma changed the game, and they tried to come for her with negative publicity for Selma, nitpicking things, and she stood up for herself, and it may have cost her an Oscar, but she had her dignity, and she tackled a movie about Martin Luther King, a movie that people ran away from. There was no way anybody was touching this film because Martin Luther King had become such a Christ figure that nobody wanted to make a movie about him because, like, if you mess it up, you mess it up. And she did it. She did it. She did it. And then she produced one of the best documentaries about Race 13th that's on Netflix. She also directed Wrinkle in Time, and she's been doing mostly TV and producing and show running recently. I hope that she gets behind the director chair and give us some more films. She definitely would be higher if I had more films to pick from, but what she did with the films that she directed was amazing. I could not sing the praises of Ava DuVernay more than what I am now. Please, if you have any comments or anything about any of these picks, or if you're missing, if you see one of yours is not going to come up, let me know. Tell me in the comments. Number 6. Jordan Peele, another recent one, but when you have banger after banger after banger like he has, the crossover, his ability to cross over to multiple populations, the ability to give us a good twist, the ability to excite and to entertain and to horrify. Jordan Peele's doing it all. He's a very creative guy. He's committed to doing creative. He's committed to doing creative projects that he himself has created. So he's committed to original content. He could have done other things, but he has not yet. He's could have probably direct anything that he wants to, but he continues to just focus on his current projects. I thought that Nope was amazing. The fact that I didn't get any type of nomination for any of the special effects awards is kind of silly when you think about it. But Get Out obviously took the world by storm. Us, I liked Us more than most people. I think he's 3 for 3, and I would give all of these a 4.5 to 5 in terms of my ratings for these films. And I think, and Jordan Peele is not going anywhere. And I also love that he's trying to put people on that look like him. He's trying to support Black women. He's trying to support minorities in the system in terms of his casting and also the work behind the scenes and producing. He's the one that picked Nia DaCosta for Candyman, and he's just a great person. And I think that number 6 is fair for Jordan Peele at this point. Number 5, Gordon Parks. If you have, let me say something right here. Well, let me talk about Gordon Parks first. You haven't seen The Learning Tree? Learning Tree is an amazing story. It's a story that's semi-autobiographical about these kids in Kansas that are into shenanigans and end up doing some pretty dangerous things and have to pay for it. But one guy, he ends up atoning by working for the person that he assaulted, and it's a lot of twists and turns in the film. It's a very sad film, but also there is a loveliness to it. I can't really put words to it without you just going to see it. You should be able to find it. I think it's part of the Criterion Collection, and I'm sure that you can rent it on Amazon. Shaft is really what he's known for, though. Shaft, who is the man, right? He did the original Shaft and the sequel to Shaft, and he did a lot of TV stuff too. One of the seminal voices in the blaxploitation era, making these types of films. I'm going to put this out here now. Melvin Van Peebles, who is a contemporary of Gordon Parks, is not on my list. I don't even have him as an honorable mention. That's a hot take. And the reason why is that I've seen his films, and I just don't think that they're that good. And even compared to the films of the day, the Cooley Highs and the Learning Trees and the Sounders, or even if you go to Coffee and Foxy Brown, those were directed by white guys, but I just don't think his films are that good. And I think that his personality, his gregarious, his in-your-face personality is probably more what he's known for than his films. Maybe I'm wrong like that. Maybe I'm too young to understand. Help me know in the comment section if I'm crazy. But I just don't think that his films are that good. Now, his impact in terms of that time, tremendous, but he's not going to make any list that I have because I just don't think he's that good. So what do you think about that? Is that too high of a take for you? Gordon Parks, I think is the best of that era. Number four, my top four are personal picks, but also I justify them one way, and that's having a film in their filmography that I would consider not the best of that year that it came out, but possibly a best film of that decade. Barry Jenkins is a very talented director. He's been around film for a while. He has not directed that many movies, but he directed Moonlight. And Moonlight was so seminal in terms of the art, the way that he lit that movie, the way that the cinematography unfolded in front of you and helped to tell the story. This slice of life, growing up, coming of age story that we get, the sentimentality, the softness of it, as well as it juxtaposes to the hardness of the streets. Amazing, absolutely amazing. I think Moonlight of the 2010 in the 2010s is, if not the best film of that decade, it's definitely top three of that decade. I have to think about it a little bit more, but it is that good. If Bill Street Could Talk is nothing to blink your eye at either. It's a very strong film, and it's a really great follow up from Barry Jenkins. I just think that he just has all the talent in the world. I think he's going to be very selective, it seems like, with his projects. And so we may not be getting a film every year, every other year. But when you see Barry Jenkins on a movie poster, get ready, because you just know that you're probably going to be in for a cinematic experience that's going to either make you cry your heart out or move you in some sort of way. So that's why Barry Jenkins, even with his filmography being so low, is right here at number four. Number three, likewise, John Singleton. We're talking about possible movies of the decade. I think Boys in the Hood is that good. I really do. I think Boys in the Hood for the 90s is one of the best films of the 90s. And I know we got, in 90s is packed. I mean, from Philadelphia to Forrest Gump to Saving Private Ryan, Jurassic Park, Toy Story. I'm just rattling these off of my top of my head. There's so many amazing films. The Matrix. There's so many amazing films in the 90s. You have to really make a case for me that Boys in the Hood is not in the conversation of best of the decade. Top five, top 10 of the decade, of probably the strongest decade of film ever, or at least since the 70s, right? So this resurgence, this renaissance of film that happened in the 90s, John Singleton had a huge part in it. It wasn't just Boys in the Hood. We had Higher Learning. We had Rosewood. We even had I actually think Baby Boy came out in the 2000s, but he directed Baby Boy, right? You know, he did, there's so many films that he told our story. And there were so many copycats that came after this. He's just an important filmmaker. He's number three to me. I grew up, I'm a millennial. 1985 was when I was born, so I grew up with these movies, so I understand there might be some biases and maybe they don't resonate with other people like they resonate with me, but they do. Rosewood, man, the folks on there were so racist. It was a horror movie. It was crazy with that movie, what they did with that movie, you know. And John Singleton, he gone too soon. I really wish we could have got more word from him before he left, but I'm glad that he left a significant impact on the world with his films. Number two. Listen, I did a whole series short about this guy. Go check it out at Bryon Knows Movies. 60 seconds where I talk a little bit about what the impact that he made. But to sum it up here, Oscar Micheaux was making films and directing films out of nowhere when Hollywood wouldn't even let black people near it in terms of being in leadership positions. He had to make his films out of Chicago and out of Harlem. He was part of the Harlem Renaissance. He made silent films. He successfully transitioned to making talkies, Within Our Gates, Murder in Harlem, Body and Soul. He's an author. He was a farmer. He did all these jobs before he even actually became a filmmaker. And he showed us what he really is, like the template of independent filmmaking in terms of raising money to make these films and to produce these films outside of the studio system. Michelle was the first one to do it. You wouldn't have a Gordon Parks, or you wouldn't have a Spike Lee or a John Singleton or any of these people I've talked about that came up through that art house style of making film if it wasn't for Oscar Micheaux. And he was doing it to counter the narrative of the birth of a nation and all these other mammy and crazy movies, Gone with the Wind, all these other crazy movies that are coming out of Hollywood over those last 20, 30 years. And I think he was successful. Now, a lot of these films you can't find anymore. A lot of these films are super long, the silent films especially. But, it's really more about his impact and what he did for cinema more than anything. So, Oscar Micheaux, salute to you, my brother. Number one, I think you know who it is. It is Spike Lee. Spike Lee is the number one black film director of all time. When you think of even the past 40 years in terms of films, you have to count him with the greats. You have to count him with the Quentin Tarantinos. You have to count him with the Steven Spielbergs, the Martin Scorseses, the Clint Eastwoods, the Michael Manns, the PTAs, all of those folks. Spike Lee has to be in the conversation with them. In terms of movies of the decade, I think Do the Right Thing can be argued to be one of the best movies, if not the best movie of the 80s. I think it's that good. Malcolm X of the 90s, it can be considered a top 10, top 15 film. And then he also did documentaries, For Little Girls, When the Levees Broke. I know that's a series, but there's so many things that he was able to do in his career, and he's still going strong. Now, I love Spike Lee. I'm going to probably do a video just about Spike Lee here pretty soon and his filmography. Spike Lee is not infallible. He's had a lot of missteps, especially recently. The longer you go, and it seems like some of his ideas have become outdated and he hasn't really evolved with them. I'm thinking specifically like a Chirac, which I know that he has to feel some sort of regret for making that film. But then he bounces back with a movie like Da 5 Bloods. And, he still has a lot of things to say. Now, Spike Lee doesn't have a Best Director Oscar, which is a shame. And I think it's because when his best films were coming out, they were so in your face in terms of talking about race and the hypocrisy of this country that those old-timey Oscar voters were never going to give him an Oscar. It just wasn't going to happen. Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, Crooklyn, you name it, of any of the films that he could have been nominated for, they weren't going to give him anything. Also, he rubbed people the wrong way as well because he's outspoken. He doesn't take crap off of people. And you got to respect that. If Spike Lee never gets a direct, it's going to be really hard for him because it doesn't seem like he's getting the chance to make the films that he wants to make nowadays. Black Klansman was the last one. I think that was 2019. Maybe he has something coming out. I don't know. But Spike Lee needs to be mentioned with the greats of all time. Not just black film directors, black directors of all time. Spike Lee is up there. So those are my top 10. Just to recap for you, number 10 was Tyler Perry. Number 9 was Julie Dash. Number 8 was Ryan Coogler. Number 7, Ava DuVernay. Number 6, Jordan Peele. Number 5, Gordon Parks. Number 4, Barry Jenkins. Number 3, John Singleton. Number 2, Oscar Micheaux. And number 1, Spike Lee. And if you're looking for watching any type of films within this month, or you don't have to just watch black films during Black History Month. You can watch them anytime during the year. If you want to get more into black films and black filmmakers, any of those 10 or any of our honorable mentions would be great places to start. So with that, we're about out of time. I do want to see if there's any comments. So don't know if we have any comments in the comment section. Any reactions to the top 10? Is there anybody that I missed? Are you like Bryon? Bryon, you're crazy. That was silly. What were you thinking? You're an idiot. You don't know movies. Let me know. I got pretty thick skin. I actually do want to know what you think about that. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. For those who were able to join the live stream, I will be back next week with the most up-to-date movie news and also some more Black History facts. I don't know what series I'm gonna do, but it's gonna be something. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you at the movies next week.